Welcome to 21st Sports preview for the NFC Wild Card game between the Seattle Seahawks and the Minnesota Vikings. So the Seahawks and the Vikings are going at it. They faced back in Week 13. That game was also played in Minnesota, and the Seahawks dominated that game 38-7. That one was all Seattle. They shut down the Vikings on offense. Bridgewater only threw for 118 yards. Peterson only rushed for 18 yards in that game. So the Seahawks have already beaten the Vikings in Minnesota in dominant fashion, but will they be able to do that again? It's tough to beat a team twice in the same year, and it should be a lot closer game this time around here in the playoffs. But the Seahawks are flying under the radar, and they're playing some of their best defense that they have, and a team that has been one of the better defensive teams over the last few years. Of course, they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and they were in the Super Bowl last year as well, but they might be playing their best defense right now. So the Seahawks are a team that is very deadly in these playoffs, and we're going to go into the numbers, and the Seahawks actually have won 6 out of their last 7 games and 8 out of their last 10. And if you look at their record overall in the season, they're 10-6, but 5 of those losses were within 1 score. So if they had won those games, they could have been 15-1. They were close to being 15-1. That's how good they were playing all year long. Of course, they had some struggles early on, but they got hot at the right time, and they closed out the season strong. The Vikings as well, at 11-5, a couple of their losses were within 1 score, so they potentially could have been 13-3. They've been playing some excellent football, especially on the defensive side of the ball, all year long, and they ended the season with a 3-game winning streak, so they were hot at the right time as well. But we look at the numbers, and on offense, the Seahawks are 4th in yards, and they're 4th in scoring, as the Seahawks average 26.4 points per game on offense. Conversely, the Vikings are 29th in yards and 16th in scoring, averaging at 22.8 points per game. So the Seahawks average almost 4 points more at 3.6 more points per game on average for Seattle. And then we look at their defense, and the Seahawks are 2nd in yards allowed. They're number 1 in the NFL in points allowed, allowing just 17.3 points per game. The Vikings are 13th in yards allowed with their defense, and they are 5th in points allowed, allowing just 18.9 points per game. So the Vikings, they've got a really good defense too, especially when it comes to scoring. But the Seahawks are the best when it comes to points allowed, and they allow 1.6 points less. So you have the 1.6 that they allow less, and they score 3.6 more. So right there, that's 5.2 points that the Seahawks have over them, at least statistically speaking. And that's probably going to be about the difference in this game. It should be between, it should be about a score difference. I don't think the Seahawks necessarily going to blow out the Vikings, although that could happen. I actually expect it to be a very low-scoring game, something like maybe 13-6. Well, let's look at some of the further numbers here. Let's go a little bit deeper. And on offense, the Seahawks are 20th in passing yards and 3rd in rushing yards. Of course, they have a banged-up backfield, and when they faced Minnesota back in Week 13, they had Thomas Rawls running the ball. Of course, Rawls is done for the year, and Seattle was hoping to get beast mode back for this game, but he did not make the flight, so they're going to have to rely on Christian Michael. Of course, Christian Michael did a pretty good job last week. He had 102 yards against Arizona and that big win for the Seahawks as they finished off the season on a high note. But we look at the defense for Minnesota matching up against them. They're 12th in passing yards allowed and 17th in rushing defense. So the Seahawks should have success on the ground. The Vikings have trouble stopping the run. And then they have a better pass defense. But the Seahawks still, they're going to have to rely on Russell Wilson. He's going to have to come through and play the way he has played. He had 3 passing touchdowns the last time these two teams faced. He was very accurate in that game as well. We look at the Minnesota Vikings on offense, and they are 31st in the league in passing yards. And then on the ground, though, they're 4th. So they have a very one-dimensional offense. It's all about the run for Minnesota. They're one of the worst teams when it comes to passing the ball. And on defense for Seattle, they're number 2 against the pass in yards allowed and number 1 against the run. So they match up really well against the Vikings, the number 1 rushing defense in terms of yards allowed against the number 4 rushing offense in terms of yards produced. And that's the thing with the Vikings. They got shut down on the run in that first game. The Vikings only had 31 total yards on the ground, 18 for McKinnon and 18 for Peterson. And then Bridgewater had like 2 yards. Asiata lost yards, and Diggs had a -6. So the Seahawks stuffed the run of Minnesota. And for the Vikings to have any chance in this game, Bridgewater's going to have to play the best football of his career to get something going on offense against a really strong and tough Seattle defense. And we look at the turnover differential, and the Seahawks are +7. That's 5th overall. And the Vikings are tied for 10th, technically 12th place, but they're +5. So they're pretty close in that turnover differential. The Seahawks have a slight edge, overall, but +2 is not much of a difference when you consider the whole season, 16 games. And the Vikings, they can force some turnovers. They do get after the ball, and that's what they're going to need. They're going to need their defense to force some turnovers to give them any kind of chance in this game. But I'm personally, as you can tell, I'm going for Seattle in this one. That's my pick. I guess it's an easy pick to make, being that they dominated the Vikings the first time around. Of course, like I said, it should be closer, because there's going to be the question in the backfield if they're going to be able to get their ground game going, and it's going to be below 0, so running is going to be a factor. It's going to be all about defense and running, but I think the difference in the game will be that eventually Russell Wilson will get the ball in the end zone, whether it's with his feet or with his arm. They say he threw 3 touchdowns the first time they met, and he rushed for a touchdown, so he had 4 total touchdowns the first time around, as he put up 28 points on the board himself. Other than that, it would have been 10-7 because it was 38-7. But Russell Wilson, if he has another big game, then it could be another blowout. But the defense of Seattle is going to make it really tough for Minnesota to score. Points are going to be few and far between, really tough to come by. And they were really tough to come by in that first game. And the Vikings, their defense is going to have to find a way to shut down Russell Wilson. And I do think it will be a low-scoring game. Like I said, I think it'll be something like maybe 13-6. Seattle ends up winning this one. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a great day and having a great weekend and enjoying all the sports.